So we had a discussion about review of literatures, where you review previous studies that have been conducted in the area, and and related areas, and then we identified a gap that had to be fulfilled, or we identified a theory which we wanted to contradict or we wanted to go along with, which was studied earlier, and we are also trying to prove the same thing. So now we will talk about research design. What exactly is a research design? Research design is a blueprint of the research. What is a blueprint? Please see, when you have your house or buildings constructed, the engineer gives you a print of what will be done, right? This is the plan that we are going to go by, and this is how it will look. So research design also is a blueprint of the research that we talk about. So it is going to explain about what a research is, the topic it is going to talk about. It is going to talk about how is the topic going to be dealt with, and what are its subtypes. So that this is going to help you focus on your research, identify what research method you will use, and what what are you going to be how are you going to approach the problem. Like I also told you, identify a small research problem, so that we'll have it in the discussion in the next class. Did any of you try doing that? Tell me one area where you feel we can do a research, and then we will have a discussion on that. We'll take that up as today's example. Anyone? Fine. I will give you, say, for example, I want to say conduct a research on the preferred brands of shampoos preferred by residents of a particular locality in Mumbai. Say, for example, see now everything, when we discussed about identifying a research problem, we said it has to be specific. Say, for example, preference of Pantene shampoos by residents of Chembur. So now when I'm going to research about this, so I'm going to collect data about the shampoos they use, and maybe I draft a Google form questionnaire and I circulate it, right? And I get data, wherein initially I will collect the personal data. So I'm going to check I'm going to now, when I've when I'm going to research on this, so I want to find out, wow, what is their perception about this Pantene shampoo? What are they? Why are they preferring this brand? And why is a particular crowd, say for example, not preferring this brand? Like so now when I'm going to do that, I'm going to take up research. I will make a research design first. So the research design actually has three main types: basically data collection, measurement, and analysis. So which talks about how am I going to collect the data first of all. As I said, it's a blueprint. What exactly is my plan of doing the research? What is the method of data collection adopted? What is the time I'm going to say, for example, if it's a thesis, maybe I will go on with it for 6 months and sometimes even beyond. But then there is a time, because that study should not get outdated. Therefore, I will stick on to a time limit. So I will say, what is the time? What is the method I'm going to use? And what kind of data I'm going to. So everything pertaining to the data that I'm going to be. Is it a primary study? Is it a secondary study? If it's a primary study, how is the sample going to be selected? And what is the sample size? There is a formula for sample size, which we will talk about it when it comes to data collection. So what is the method I'm going to use? What is the type of sampling I'm going to use? And then from where and how am I, what is the actual data I'm going to collect? Say, for example, age or locality of their residence, and type of hair. When we were talking about shampoo, so we are going to talk about the type of hair, etc. Right? So I'm going to design with the collect data. So I'm going to plan as to what I'm going to collect. Then I'm going to measure the data. Like, is this sufficient? Right? How much will be sufficient, and what exactly? And then what kind of analysis am I going to do on the uh, data that I'm going to? Is it going to be a, or if it is going to be a case study, I may have a descriptive study and then write. Uh, are you able to follow till now, class? Are you able to follow? Can somebody answer me? Am I audible? Or even you type it out on the chat box.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Can you repeat the question again?
I will repeat. See, well, should I repeat from what we started? We did have some late joiners. Yeah.
As you wish.
Yeah. We started with what we finished in the last class, which was review of literature. When we reviewed the literatures, what was review of literature all about? We said that we are going to read the past studies pertaining to this area and related areas. And then we are going to identify some gap that we want to fill, or some already proven theory which is applicable now also, and then highlight on it or throw light on it, right? Or some theory that we are trying to contradict, which was already proven as. So something of this kind for which we are reviewing the literature. जो past studies थे ना, उसको हम वापस read कर रहे हैं, and वापस we are trying to see how have they researched, what are their findings, what are their conclusion, what methods did they use, what was the period of the study, and in what way is it going to be helpful. Finally we will write. So what happens is when we study that, we get an idea of what are the areas that have been researched upon, so that we don't duplicate, and we try and apply that theory which is done here. Duplicate in the sense already somebody has done perceptions of a particular brand of shampoo, or preference of a brand of shampoo in a particular locality during this period. I don't want to do that, do the same thing. So I will try and do something. Maybe I will try applying it to a different locality. So this helps me when I study the previous studies. I know what has been done, what has to be done, right? So review of literature helped me in doing that. Now we talk about research design. To when did the review of literature, I also said that this is the gap that I identified. I identified a gap. Okay, this has to be researched upon based on previous studies. Are you getting a connect now? Are you getting a connect now? So जो मुझे रिसर्च करना था वो मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव होगा ऑफ द स्टडी. आई सेड प्रेफरेंस ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर ब्रांड ऑफ शैम्पूज, मेरा ब्रॉड ऑब्जेक्टिव हो गया. So now to understand this, yeah, of a particular locality, maybe a big society I would take, I would want to research on them. So what I do is I will take a big society, and I will try and research on them, right? I will try to collect data from them, and I will try to actually understand what is happening. So I'm going to collect data initially. Have you seen Google form questionnaires? They do ask you for your personal details, male, female, age, etc. Have you seen a Google form questionnaire, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So initially they ask you about your personal details, and they ask you what are the, what is your income, what is your expenditure. Also at times, how much would you want to spend on a shampoo, and uh, like what brand, what are the brands available, why do you prefer this brand, why do you not prefer some other brand. All these things can be understood from that data, right, when I analyze. So I'm going to float a Google form questionnaire, so for which I will have a research design. I decided this Google form questionnaire, but prior to that I will draft something called as research design, which is a blueprint. So when I draft a research design, it is going to give me an idea of, I'm going to jot down. Okay, it is going to take me, I'm going to collect data for 6 months. Then I'm going to write the analysis for, I'm going to classify and do the data part जो भी है उसको edit classify करने में मुझे 2 महीना चाहिए, and to analyze the data I need 3 months. So I will divide the time and I will write down the timeline that I require before which I have to finish. So it will help me with a skeleton of the study, in the sense, in terms of timeline and in terms of the plan. It is a plan that I am making. So I will stick on to that plan. I will stick on to that schedule so that my research becomes a lot easier. So it is a kind of planning when you draft a research design. Class, are you understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
So now, when I talk about a research problem, basically any kind of research design, say for example, it is going to talk about the tool. If it is going to be for an organization, if it has a problem, like for example, the company had problems in selling the shampoo. So it is going to say, like, this is the time, as I told you, phase, this the design phase जो है ना, उसमें आपको what tools are used and how it is going to be used is going to be, and again it is going to be a very very impactful thing that you are going to use with minimum bias. मैंने बोला इतना टाइम मुझे डेटा कलेक्शन के लिए चाहिए, इतना टाइम एनालिसिस के लिए चाहिए, and I am going to find out how accurate, I mean accuracy of the result is also determined. There I will write, I'm going to accept about 5%, right? Here and there 5% हो सकता है मेरा findings का, but beyond that, whatever I have found has to be relevant. We will talk about that when we talk about data analysis. समझ में आ रहा है? Are you following? So research design is basically a plan. Just to summarize, what plan? To how to conduct the research and what is a schedule that I have to stick on to, in a nutshell. Understanding? Where, for how long will I be collecting the data, for, and how long is it going to take, from what period to what period will I classify the data, and I will say, I mean, say edit the data, etc. And then I'm going to even find out how long is it going to take for analysis and what analysis I'm going to do on that. So when I talk about a research design, I need an accurate purpose statement. Like, this is going to be the purpose. I want to find out the perception of, I want to find out the preference for Pantene shampoo and perception of it among the consumers, right? And then what techniques I will be using to implement the what techniques to implement for collecting. Like I told you, will I use a Google form questionnaire? Will I interview the consumers? Will I have a case study kind of a research, whatever research, right? And what when will I, how will I be analyzing? Is it going to be a descriptive analysis, or is it going to be an statistical analysis that I'm going to do, right? All these things will have to be a clear cut this thing, uh, clear, it has to be spelled out in a clear cut way. So when I use the type of research methodology, now let's discuss research methodology before we proceed further. Now that I have spoken about how do you draft a research design, a little about how do you draft a research design, or what are the elements that you need, right, for a research design. And we are going to talk about research methodology. Methodology का मतलब क्या है? How systematically, or what exactly is the research all about, right? So I had reviewed the literatures. I have identified my gap. I said that uh, people are somewhat, people are somewhat using, lot of people are using Pantene shampoos in this particular area. Okay? So now, uh, what is the reason that they are preferring Pantene shampoo? If I want to analyze, if I want to understand this, research on this, so what will I do? I will draft something called as research methodology, right? So when I draft something called as research methodology, what is this? Research methodology is going to talk about where, keeping my objective of the study as its, say, underlying. It is going to discuss about what is the data source. Is it primary or secondary? We will discuss in detail when we talk about primary, secondary. Research methodology, we will talk about if we are going to use primary data or secondary data, or what kind of a study is it? Is it a case study, or is it going to be some kind of a meta-analysis? Meta-analysis also we will discuss in detail later. But meta-analysis क्या होता है? You are going to study various studies and then accordingly understand the problem. Majorly ये medical studies में होता है meta-analysis. Like what diagnosis, majorly, I mean, it can be used in other areas also, right? So, what kind of a study are you going to do? Let us stick on to our example and then we will discuss about other types. Mine was a basically an analytical study, right? Analytical matlab jahan pe I'm going to use some statistics, collect data, I'm going to classify the data, I mean, edit the data, classify the data, and then I'm going to do a statistical analysis, for example. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to understand the research methodology जो है ना, when I drafted, I identified what I have to study using my review of literature. There was a gap. To fill that gap, I have identified an objective. So ये objective क्या था? Why are people preferring this brand of Pantene shampoo, right? In this particular locality. So when I identified that, I'm going to draft my objective, right? When I draft my objective, I will write there what is the source of data and how is it going to be collected, what kind of sampling is going to be used, where am I going to conduct the study, locality, right? And where when I conduct when the locality is identified, I'm going to say how many samples are going to be studied, what is the sampling method that I'm going to use, etc. Right? Her cheese when I spell out period of study, again very important, right? So all these things will be spelled out in your research methodology along with the objective. So how will I frame an objective? So we will just have a glance of how will, I mean, a little understanding of how will I frame an objective. I said people are preferring Pantene shampoo, right? So when I collected the data, I must have collected their basic details like their age, like their gender, etc. Correct? So I'm going to say Pantene shampoo. I mean, age has a signal. Age is why youngsters prefer Pantene shampoo. Supposing this I have in mind. So I say that uh, age determines their preference for Pantene shampoo is my objective. Okay? Gender determines the objective number 2. Gender determines their preference for preferring Pantene shampoos. And then I say for example, availability in the nearby stores also determines their preference for Pantene shampoo. मुझे जब ये सब देख के थोड़ा आइडिया आया, review of literature देखा, then I understood the data that I'm going to be collecting, right? So I feel probably these could be the factors that determine their preference for Pantene shampoo: age, gender, and the availability in the nearby stores. And we can even take cost. So 4 factors are as of now determining their preference. Are you following, class? Are you following? Is it, class? Are you following? Should I repeat something? Can you type out on the chat box? Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
समझ में आ रहा है
Yes, ma'am.
आपको?
हाँ मैम.
Sure. I mean, if you're not able to follow, please let me know. Do you want me to repeat something?
No, ma'am. We
Okay.
aren't.
Okay. Just so we said that we identified an objective. ये भी आपको आपके research methodology में आएगा. So once I will draft something called as research methodology, which talks about my objective, the area of study where it's going to be conducted, sample size, and source of data, and what method I use to collect the data, what tools I will be using to analyze the data. If it's going to be a descriptive study, it's going to be a descriptive data. And if it is going to be analytical, it is I'm going to understand what analytical study I'm going to use. Are you following, class? So when I say this, right, I'm going to say um, I'm going to draft this as my research methodology, and then I'm going to talk about what objections could be there for the research. Like, for example, another company may object, or say the society people may object, or something like that. Any kind of probable objections which may or may not be there, right? So I have my limitations also spelled out, and scope of the study also spelled out. When I'm drafting a research design, I have to be very clear. These things will be spelled out, of course, in my research methodology area, but I need to understand these, right? And settings for the study. Basically, I said it is going to be in a particular big society which has about 8, 9 wings, and it is going to have, as each wing has 8 floors, and say 4 flats in each floor. Therefore, this kind of an setting I have, and it is going to be a residential setting, whatever this thing. And as I said, timeline: 6 months to collect data, 2 months to analyze, classify the data, edit and classify the data, and then 3 months for data analysis, etc. And then I have to measure the analysis. How accurate is it, right? So will all these things hold good in my study? Is it because of the gender? Gender, say, supposing I have gender as proven to be a significant factor based on my analysis, right? So I need to understand what is the measurement: 5% accuracy, 1% accuracy, etc. Class, are you able to understand? Class?
Yes, ma'am.
And now, whenever I draft a proper research design, जिसका मतलब है prior planning, which is jotted down. Prior planning, when it is done in note in a verbal way, matlab in words, obviously it is going to help me make my study success, right? And I'm going to stick on to that plan, no bias at all. So I need to create a research design that is going to meet all the required characteristics, right? Or I will create a survey that meets all the main characteristics. So any research design has to be neutral. The moment I plan the research, it is going to be neutral, not based on my bias. And then it has to be reliable. See, I cannot just say I will collect data in 1 month, whereas it is actually going to take me 6 months. I foresee कम से कम 6 महीने लगेंगे मुझे डेटा कलेक्ट करने के लिए. And I write 1 month. So is it reliable? It is not. And it has to be valid. Valid in the sense like whatever I draft, it has to be there has to be some bit of validity uh, which says that it can be done, right? And this has to be generalized. Say preference for Pantene shampoo. It can be generalized also. Generalized matlab, where I've done it for a specific study, it can be generalized for some other study if it is also of the same line. If it is in the same line. Any doubts so far? Class? So, okay. Now, continuing what we were saying. Now, whatever factors we say, it is going to help me answer any research questions, right? If we have a proper planning without any bias, which considers the validity, the neutrality, and then the generalizability of any research design. It is going to be a proper research design. मेरा planning हो गया, so obviously my research also will be a very very uh, I mean uh, easily doable one, right? Easily conductable one. So researchers should first of all have a clear understanding of what each research design is. Research design, I repeat, it is a planning, right, of your research. What are you going to do and when are you going to do? How long for each step? Are you following? I keep repeating what research design is so that you don't lose track of what we are talking about. Qualitative research design, again, it is going to determine any kind of relationship between the data, observations, etc. Like, say, for example, any kind of theory that we are going to say why a particular thing happens. So I'm going to say, I'm going to observe this for the next 10 days. If I leave at 8:10, will I reach my office at 9 o'clock? Or if there is some other shampoo available, I'm going to observe Pantene is easily available in all the stores. Therefore, it is preferred among these people here. So, if I say I will offer Dove shampoo also here and see, let me observe it for 5 months, right? So, again, this is a qualitative research design. I'm supposing I'm just going to base an observation. It is going to be a, not collecting with questionnaire, etc. I'm going to keep it. Uh, I observe that it may be a qualitative research design. Quantitative research design again is for cases, again, as I said, statistical calculations. I said I will collect data using my questionnaire, right? So when I collected using data and I'm going to analyze the relationship between the gender of the respondent and also the availability of these shampoos or their preference of these shampoos, right? Yes. Or age group that people that the consumers consume shampoo and their preference for the shampoo. So if I'm going to get that, that is again an analyzable one. Class, are you following? Now, when I talk about a descriptive research design, there are going to be 5 categories basically of a research design. It is going to be a descriptive research design, experimental research design. Like you have seen all these, like say for example, they plan like COVID ke liye drug laate time they tested on animals, right? That is an experimentation. So before which they will plan, they will say, "Ki I'm going to test it on rats. We will get hold of 5 rats. We will, inject this drug into them. We'll keep them for into this in this atmosphere in this environment for some time." Right? That is an experimental research design, the planning that they do. Then correlational research design. Correlational research design, again, intake of chocolate among children and their weight gain, right? Is it leading to obesity or is it increasing their weight, etc.? Class, are you following? So I'm going to design. I'm going to get hold of 10 children and I'm going to feed them, say, 200-gram bar of chocolate every day in the morning in empty stomach. And I will see how much weight they gain in 30 days. So I'm planning this research. Diagnostic, majorly they use it in medical term, medical. Again, the earlier example, like for example, or even say like how is a patient reacting to a particular drug? It can be used in other areas, but majorly medical may use it. How does a patient react to a particular drug where I plan and then I'm going to create like 10 days, I will be administering the drug on this patient and I will see how he reacts, right? And apart from that, or how he responds to the particular drug. Explanatory, where it explains a phenomenon. Availability of Pantene shampoos is creating a demand among consumers. So they are going in and purchasing. So I will try and explain a phenomenon. I will make sure Pantene shampoo is available in all the stores. I will make sure Dove is also available in all the stores. So I will see, I will observe what consumers actually prefer. Any doubt so far? Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Are you following, or are you just saying yes, no, etc.? समझ में आ रहा है आपको, या ऐसे ही बोल रहे हो आप यस नो जो भी है?
ना मैम समझ में आ रहा है.
तो अभी हम थोड़ा बहुत बिफोर वी जस्ट फिनिश्ड विथ रिसर्च डिजाइन, and I will be sharing this presentation with you. But before that, let us understand the flow of any research that we are going to do. We already discussed this. We identified a research problem, correct? When we identified a research problem, like for example, why are people preferring Pantene shampoos in this particular locality, and uh, then we said what is their perception of Pantene shampoo. Okay, so हमें ये जानना था. So this was my research problem. So when I identified this research problem, they are all preferring Pantene shampoos. So now I'm going to understand what is their perception and why are they preferring. So I'm going to review literatures. Review literatures bola to I'm going to study. I mean previous researchers done in this particular area. So when previous researchers that are done in this particular area, I'm going to go through them. I'm going to see if it is, say for example, what do you say? Uh, when I say previous research designs, previous researchers, I identify have has something else be done in the same area. Similar studies conducted in this area. Yes, what method are they using? How did they, I mean, what is their methodology? What tools did they use to analyze? Did they have a primary data collection kind of, etc.? What is the period of study? What is the locality of study? Or is my study contradicting them? Or say I'm using a different tool, probably this tool will not be used. They use regression. I'm going to use factor analysis. I mean, we will discuss all these things when we talk about data analysis. So I'm going to use a different tool and see, right? And is my findings contradicting them? And if this is the research gap, I'm trying and filling that research gap. Like for example, somebody must have done on toothpaste brands preferred by these residents. Now I'm doing on shampoos. So that is again a filling up of the gap, right? So first we started with an introduction of the topic, research problem. Then we said we will review past studies and find out what has to be done, what has been done. Then we spoke about research methodology, right? We said what method am I going to follow? What method, in the sense like this is the gap that has been, found out when I reviewed previous studies, and when I found out the gap, I'm going to fill in this gap by researching on this. Like how? How am I going to fill in the gap? I'm going to study this. This is that is going to be my objective. I identified the objective. So because we initially when we learned about research, we said every research has to be objective, right? So I identified the objective. So when I identified the objective, how am I going to, achieve the objective or fill the understand? Achieve that aim that I have set. I'm going to collect data. डेटा कलेक्शन किधर है, क्या कैसे होगा, प्राइमरी या सेकेंडरी? अगर प्राइमरी होगा तो is it going to be a census study or a sampling study? If it is sampling, what sampling method? All these things when we discuss about data sampling etc we will understand. पर ये सब आपको spell out करना जरूरी है in research methodology. Am I going to use a questionnaire? Am I going to interview the respondents? I can even do one thing. I can carry a schedule. मैंने बोला एक सोसाइटी में 8 wings है, 8 floors है, and then say 4 flats in each floor. I may go to every family and interview them also, right? So I may even observe their behavior, right, when they speak about it. So all these things are added way of data collection, wherein when I analyze the result, I can always add saying this is also this was also observed along with that, right? Period of study has to be mentioned in the research methodology. And what tools I will use to analyze them? Is it going to be a descriptive analysis? Analytical may, if I choose analytical, I may have to write what analysis am I going to use, right? And maybe I can even mention the name of the software if required. Any doubts so far? So three sequence we saw. When we introduced the research problem that we identified, then we reviewed the literatures, identified the gap, and we spelled out how we are going to fill this gap in research methodology section. For all these, you had drafted a research design, which is a plan of how you are going to carry out the research, how long each phase is going to take. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt so far? Class?
No, ma'am, I got it.
So once I identify the objective, my objective is going to lead me to what is called as hypothesis. You remember last class we spoke about hypothesis. You all had some doubts, and then we said we will discuss when we talk about hypothesis, right? So I will have my hypothesis shared here. Whatever was my objective, I said easy availability शायद हो सकता है कि these respondents prefer. And then I say age is also one factor that makes them prefer this particular brand of shampoo, right? Or and sometimes I even feel gender could be another uh, factor which is making them prefer this particular brand of shampoo. Just give me a second, plug in the charge. So when we identify these three factors, I need to start analyzing those the data that I have collected, and I'm going to frame a hypothesis, right? मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव के हिसाब से मैंने अभी 3 ऑब्जेक्टिव्स आइडेंटिफाई किया था. ब्रॉड ऑब्जेक्टिव था why do they prefer, right? Or what makes them prefer, and maybe perceptions is also another objective. But then I'm also going to talk about, I'm going to narrow down the objective. I'm going to say people prefer, youngsters prefer Pantene shampoo. Since the locality has more of young residents, they prefer Pantene shampoo. Second, it is because of the availability in stores they prefer, right? Third, I'm going to check if it is like this or not. मेरे हिसाब से ये आया है, मुझे लग रहा है, but मैं टेस्ट करूंगी, right? And then gender is another. Many women prefer, and it's a women-dominated society. Supposing based on the data, I've understood these, and I'm going to check these. Okay? So now we will talk about drafting the objective into hypothesis or converting the objectives into hypothesis. Okay? Are you getting a connect between what we saw and what we are doing? अभी आपको connect आ रहा है?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you. So we start with hypothesis. So we will be covering characteristics of hypothesis, sources of hypothesis, types of hypothesis, examples of hypothesis, functions, and then steps in testing of hypothesis. And there will be some errors which we will be seeing, right? What are the types of errors? Whenever I talk about hypothesis, it is a testable prediction which is expected to occur. When I told you, मेरे observation के हिसाब से data को मैंने observe किया, एंड लोगों को मैंने ऑब्जर्व किया, मुझे लग रहा है because women prefer Pantene shampoo, and since it is available and since they are all youngsters, they prefer Pantene shampoo. बराबर? तो ये मुझे मन में strongly लग रहा है. So I am going to check if it is going to be true, right? क्योंकि ये मेरा prediction था या मेरा assumption था as a researcher. So it can be true, it can be false. ठीक है? And then it has to be testable. So when I test it, I need to know how authentic is it. It's an assumption about the population parameter. Generally, we say, generally women like it, right? But how is it in this society? This society also is women dominated. एंड अकॉर्डिंग टू मी मुझे ऐसे ही लग रहा है, टोटल डेटा तो जैसे डेटा देखती हो ना, मुझे ऐसे ही लग रहा है कि यंगस्टर्स प्रेफर एंड वीमेन प्रेफर एंड सो ऑन, राइट? So I'm going to check it. Again, it is including components like, say, now when I talk about hypothesis, I'm going to talk about variables, population. Variables क्या होते हैं? What are variables? Class? Any doubt? I mean, any idea of what a variable is? I know, see, I will talk to you about it, but what is variable?
Is it a parameter?
Exactly, it's a parameter or a factor, right? In any research. Gender is a variable, right? Availability is a variable, okay? And then preference is a variable again, right? So it is basically a parameter that you are going to use. Very good, right? So now this research hypothesis जो है ना, it is going to test the relationship between the two variables. Like, what are these two variables? Gender and preference, right? Age and preference, or age group and preference. Availability in the nearby store and preference. Okay? So any testable statement is going to be called as hypothesis, which is basically the researcher's assumption on the study. A hypothesis should be clear and precise, right? So that you have to consider it reliable. Like, for example, I say gender is one factor that makes them prefer uh, this shampoo. So again, is it clear actually to you? Is there any ambiguity in that statement, or is there any vagueness in that statement? Gender is one factor that makes them prefer Pantene shampoos. And if it is going to be a relational hypothesis, again, relationship between two variables. Like, for example, the more the availability, more will be the preference for Pantene shampoo, right? So the more I'm going to say, the more it is available in the store, the more it will be preferred, right? And the hypothesis, again, it has to be specific. I told you my hypothesis here I framed. It was based on the objective. I mean, what makes them prefer was the broad objective. Gender makes them prefer was a narrower objective, right? Now, I want to see if actually gender makes them prefer Pantene shampoo. And so I framed it into a hypothesis saying gender gender is one factor that makes them prefer Pantene shampoo, right? And again, how I explained the hypothesis, was it simple and understandable? Whatever I stated as hypothesis, class? I just made one statement saying gender makes preference for Pantene shampoo. I mean, or gender is one factor because of which they are preferring Pantene shampoo. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
The statement is very clear and the statement is precise, right? And it is also simple. So any hypothesis has to be clear. Any hypothesis should be precise, and it is also reliable, right? And if it is relational, like the older the people are, the lesser do they prefer Pantene shampoo. Or more women prefer Pantene shampoos more. Women prefer Pantene shampoos more, which means obviously men prefer Pantene shampoos less. This is a hypothesis based on my understanding of whatever is the observation of the data or of the people that I am going to test. And then it is specific, and also I can conduct more studies on this, right? Like more studies in the sense when I said more women prefer Pantene shampoo, what kind of Pantene shampoo, or what do men prefer, etc. And again, it is an explanation. Basically, I'm able to explain my hypothesis, what it is, right? Now, how do you get hypothesis? How do you बेसिकली जो भी मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव था उसको ही मैंने कन्वर्ट किया हाइपोथेसिस के फॉर्म में. Class, are you understanding? Before we start with this, we'll just have a recap of what we started today. Today we spoke about research design. Research design is basically a blueprint of your research that you're going to do. What are you going to do? When are you going to do? What is the time frame? I can even say if I have to complete the research in 3 years, I will start in January 2024. I will start with my introduction. I will understand the research problem, identify the research problem, and then मेरा area तो मन के अंदर है. But then what am I going to spell it out? How am I going to spell it out as a research problem? Introduce. इसके लिए 15 दिन लगेगा. Then I will have my literatures reviewed. I will take 6 months. I will study previous studies in that area and relational study related areas, etc. And then I'm going to talk about my plan of collecting data or deciding on what data type, collecting the data, where to collect it from, when to collect it, and how do I go about collecting them, and when am I going to start with editing, classifying, etc. And then when am I going to start the analysis, etc. And then I then said about what are the characteristics that an ideal research design should have or a good research design should have, right? And why should you actually draft a research design, which means importance of a research design, so that you are able to focus on your research, you are able to stick on to the timelines, and you are not biased when you conduct your research, right? So these things we spoke about research design. Then we said what a structure of a research looks like. We started with an introduction where we introduced the research problem. Then we reviewed a few literatures, and then we actually identified the gap. And then we wrote something called as the research methodology. This is a very, very important step where you are telling me what did you use, what is your objective, what is the gap, what gap are you trying to fill in, which is going to be your objective, and how are you going to do that, what is the period of the study, what is the area of the study, and how are you going to collect the data, what is the source of data, how are you going to collect the data. If it is going to be secondary data, maybe from some websites or some published sources, etc. And how are you going to analyze the data, what tools will you be using, and how will you be able to report whatever you are using as the, what tools, statistical tools you will be using. At times even you can mention the software. This is what we said about research methodology, where you will be spelling out your objectives, which will then be converted into hypothesis. Any doubts so far? Any doubt?
And what is this one? General pattern that influence the thinking process of people.
Please come again. I'm not getting your question.
यहाँ पे 4th point लिखा हुआ है जनरल पैटर्न दैट इन्फ्लुएंस द पीपल थिंक.
General pattern? No, we have not started with this. We have not started with this. Okay.
Okay.
I will just tell you what it means. The general pattern, matlab, for example, when I saw there were a lot of women shopping, right? And year after year, I've been seeing women going and crowding in sari shops. Then I feel that women are the ones who shop sari. It's a general pattern that has been following something related to that. We have not started with sources of hypothesis. Okay. Maybe sources of hypothesis, we will start from the next class. For now, we started with what is a hypothesis, what are the characteristics of a good hypothesis. Okay. Any doubts so far? We will start with the thing, sources of hypothesis in the next class. Are you able to get a connect?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any doubts?
No.
And I even gave you a work which you didn't, I think. I messaged you in the group to think about some problem, small research problem, and then you shoot it out in the class. We will take that up as an example. Can we continue in the next class? In case you don't have any queries or any doubts.
Sure, ma'am.
हम हम कर सकते हैं next class.
I don't hear you, sorry. I don't hear you.
Actually, my microphone is not open.
Sorry.
Microphone issue. Man.
Okay, microphone issue. My side?
Yeah, ma'am. You are audible.
Okay. So if you don't have any queries, can we continue in the next class?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Sure. So we will catch up tomorrow. We will finish. We will continue with hypothesis wherever we stopped today. Okay. Have a nice day.
Thank you, ma'am.